it's a tough act to follow. I'm a huge fan of Ken Aletter's, and I thought Jack did a masterful job with Rupert Day too, and it's been a great agenda all day. But now we're going to talk about kind of where the rubber meets the road and where the money meets the cash register, so to speak. You have a lot of buying power up here on stage, and analytical power too. The theme, is a little tough. It's activating video-neutral media strategies. And when I thought of that thesis or that idea, I started thinking back to when Madison Avenue really started thinking about video neutrality, and it was probably actually pre-internet. It was really when this guy, Steve Fredericks, who was the CEO of TNS, which is now part of Kantar, which is part of WPP, wrote a book called Stradvertising. Bad name, but a great idea in the book, which is, he said we're moving from a world of media platforms like TV, newspaper, radio, and out of home to one of media formats: video, print, text, audio. And I think he was a little prophetic because with the emergence of the internet, this concept of video really started to converge. And you saw some of the agencies actually create video investment groups and starting to think about video as one whole. So I'd kind of like to start off with a kind of an opening question, but first let me introduce the panel so you know their perspectives and where they're coming from. So I don't think they're in the same order as the slides on your screen, so let me, from my left and your right, we have Chris Magel, who's the head of national broadcast for Initiative, which is one of the largest agencies, part of the Interpublic Group and Media Brands. And then we have Lyle Schwartz, who's head of research and analytics for GroupM, one of the biggest buyers of media in the world. We have David Cohen, who's the chief media officer of UM, a sister agency to Initiative, part of Interpublic. And then we have Barry Lowenthal, who's kind of the renegade from MDC Partners, kind of the spunky upstart holding company. And what you all have in common is that you're kind of neutral, but some of you are more neutral than others, I think. I was just talking to Barry, and I think you now spend about 60% of your clients' budgets on digital, however that's defined. Probably not as big a share in the other holding company units, but we'll get into that. What I'd like to do is open up with each of you kind of describing this concept of video neutrality and really getting at the heart of this basic question, which is, are all video impressions the same? Should they be looked at as one integrated whole, or are there really differences? Why do we need to think of it in a neutral way?
You asking me first?
Well,
okay.
Jump into it.
Well, they're not the same. Just like every single media partner offers something different, from an audience perspective, from a content perspective. So they are not the same. And actually, when I think about a holistic approach to video, I think about trying to find different video channels that are complementary to each other. So, and what I think very much about is finding ways to complement national TV, which tends to be the basis for what a lot of our clients do. So when I think about that, and I think about the fact that 3/4 of TV viewing is generated by the heaviest viewing 40% of the country, and about 12% of TV viewing is generated by the lightest viewing 40% of the country. A while back, we weren't able to balance that out. TV worked as well as it worked. It was the biggest medium. Print was another big medium. But today, there are a lot more choices for us to help try to balance that out. And I think when you think about place-based video, for example, and you're looking for people who are light TV viewers, people pretty much self-identify as a light TV viewer by walking out of their home. If they leave and close the door, they're probably not a heavy TV viewer.
Sure.
And if they get in their car and they go to a job, they're probably a very upscale and a light TV viewer. And so the people that are exposed to video in places are, and the place-based video industry in itself is a very large complementary source of video impressions. And online video can be looked at it that way as well.
Good. I'll just dissect that question down into two basic parts. The first part is, are we counting video the same way cross-channel? And that has been our kind of single greatest Achilles heel, I think, in terms of this video neutrality idea. And while we haven't quite cracked it, I think that if we look at just television and online video as kind of the bulk of what we're talking about, we are at least counting that in a similar way. So the opportunity to see against a specific audience segment could be looked at across channels. And then the question comes to value. So if we count it the same, is it worth the same? And totally agree with Chris, it is not worth the same. In fact, we have done a number of studies, 3 in the past 2 years, that have looked at the value per dollar of linear television advertising versus online video as an example, and have found that dollar for dollar, I know this is heresy, online video is more productive at moving brand attitudes, message recall, purchase intent, brand favorability, et cetera. So the value is different, but we have to count it the same way cross-channel before we could progress the conversation.
You want to
Go ahead.
All right, I'm the research guy here, so we'll talk from the numbers. Video has to be measured the same way as any other media, no matter where it is, because you have to have a common platform by which to judge. So that, as I agree with you, is the measurement point of view, and we're not there. And I was having a conversation just a few minutes ago with a couple of people outside. One of the biggest problems with the measurement not being there is that a lot of media get overlooked in media mix modeling, because in order to get to any value within a media mix modeling, you need variation. Without the relevancy of good data, what happens is they end up using planned data. And if we all know planners, they plan things flat for 4 weeks and then change and go 4 weeks. And that yields no relationship to sales. So the first area, and I agree, we have to measure it all the same, and we have to have good, solid measurement. The second part, the evaluation, each media has a strength and a weakness. TV, at home, a big screen, but it's sedimentary. It's in the household-based measurement. Then you have out of home, which is proximity to purchase. And each of these have to be valued in that manner. So the measurement and the valuation to what the client wants to do, where, when, and how. And with the valuation comes what I'm willing to pay for it.
Right, because the demand
Amen.
is going to help judge that price too.
Yep.
Barry or Roll?
Yeah, so when we talk about neutrality, it comes up in 2 big areas. The first one is when we start off with comms planning, and you start off, and that's idea-led. So we have a big idea to reach a particular target, and how do we want to distribute that idea or activate that idea in lots of different channels. At that point, all media starts off at some base level, and then you start to figure out what is the best way to activate that idea. The second way that I think neutrality gets talked about is on the audience-driven media buying side. So, and that's very much performance-led. So at that point, you don't really care so when you're talking about buying programmatic media through the trading desk, what matters to you is where you're buying the audience, regardless of what channel, whether that's social, video, display, mobile. It doesn't matter as long as you can find that audience and measure that performance. In which case, then that's very much a neutral way of thinking about buying media. I'm not quite sure that I would put place-based media within that bucket, because you can't evaluate performance the same way that you can evaluate performance in some of those other channels.
The one, can I just add one thing? The one kind of thing I don't necessarily entirely agree with, there's pre-market, so before you go to market, what's the value of that impression on different channels? And you have to know the relative, what you're willing to pay for that video impression, regardless of, it's not anywhere you find them, you're willing to pay a $10 CPM. So I think that there has to be some pre-market thought on value. And then the thing that's really interesting is the in-market optimization, which has been relegated to digital for 20 years, is now coming to a television set near you, or a out-of-home digital billboard near you, or something. That's the most exciting thing. So we use our best guess up front, but the market decides what works and what doesn't work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think we agree.
Okay, then we agree.
Yeah.
Violent agreement here.
Well, that was a great setup for where I want to go with this, and we are going to get specifically into place-based, because I think it's part of this whole ecosystem we call video now. But I want to pick up on this thought here, because I think you all agree that not all video impressions are equal. The title of the panel has the word strategy in it. You kind of alluded to this pre-concept. And I'm struck because Erwin Efron, this great guru of media planning, just passed away, but he always said this notion of, he called it the great media disconnect, which is that you'd spend all this time in your strategy groups and your client brand groups, understanding who your consumer is, right? And you would understand them with pretty good precision. And then you have to retrofit it into a trading currency, a GRP or something like that, in order to do business. And in the end, something gets lost in the shuffle because all that great nuance that you knew that the consumer would have this kind of experience on a primetime network TV show versus a cable show versus a digital out-of-home location kind of gets lost when you compress it down to a GRP. So is that an inevitable fact of moving from strategic planning to buying, that you always have to reduce it to an impression?
Well, you're assuming that the only evaluation metric is the GRP. And that's not how we do it. We utilize a lot of different data sources to pick those partners and pick those programs. And when we build packages with media partners, we're actually building very targeted packages of programming and networks and day parts and different video channels that are selected far more on the profile of that consumer than they are on their rating against adults 18 to 49. At the same time, you got to have a currency that is common across all that can be translatable, and that currency currently exists on an age, sex, demo basis.
So your demographic is, whether it be an Arbitron number, a Nielsen number, or anyone else's number, from a buyer-seller, we jokingly refer to it as the lie by which we all agree to abide by. But in today's marketplace, with the proliferation of data, the selection process, the whole strategic process that the buyer does that the seller doesn't see is tremendous, down to regionality, down to zip code, down to whether it's male, female, whether they're shoppers, not shoppers, kids, not kids, what kind of cars they have. The amount of data we have for segmenting and identifying who we want to reach and what media vehicles down to the tactic is tremendous now. But again, the buy in which we have that data, the seller normally doesn't have that data. Right. So the only data we have is that common currency of a measurement of an audience that we can agree to.
So I think people get caught up in worrying about that currency when it's all it is it's a transaction method.
Well, I want to get into that because I think that's where the world is going, and it relates to the panel that follows us with programmatic trading and the role that DMPs and data are playing. But I just want to follow up because I still want to understand something. Remember, I'm just a journalist, I'm not a practitioner. And there's some things that are a mystery to me. And one of them is that, David, you just said that online video impressions are more powerful, more higher return on investment than television, right? If I heard what you said correctly.
More valuable dollar for dollar.
Dollar for dollar, yeah.
The most reaction I've had in recent weeks of anything we've covered was a study that Interpublic Media Labs and Magna did on the second screen report. And one of the reactions that I was surprised at was that in the report, you note that 70% of all advertising dollars are still spent in the living room, primarily on the television set. And we had Digerati folks freaking out. How is it possible that 70% of all advertising is still done on television? And I'm thinking, like, where have these guys been all this time? But the point is, it's kind of valid. The shares haven't changed all that much, despite the fact that you've unlocked all these video impressions, whether in places or online, and the allocation's still going to television. And I'm trying to understand why that is.
How much time do you have?
Yeah.
Sorry?
How much time do you have?
Oh, well, give me the short.
I mean, I think that the simple answer, and we talk about the barriers, what's the inhibitor to kind of moving cross-channel. The fact of the matter is that television is a very, very efficient medium. It is nearly frictionless. When we enter into the upfront and we're able to transact television dollars in a much more expeditious way than the time and energy that goes into terms and conditions and legal and the detail around an online video buy, it is just much harder. And we are all pressured to deliver results for clients based on a limited kind of resource and bandwidth, and that unless that business gets easier to transact, it will not grow commensurate with the way that it should. So I think that's number one. Number two, the currencies that we're just talking about, you need kind of a standardization across all channels, but you have all of these companies that are sprouting up from the ether, TRA, Rentrack, ComScore, on and on and on, and every one brings a new layer of complexity to the party. So how do we think about that truly in a video agnostic way, cross-channel? Not easy to do. So until the world becomes as frictionless in the online video space as it is in the linear television space, I think that we're gonna see the same kind of. It's slow. It's like a war of erosion, right? It's not. It's just not a landslide.
Well, the other part, before we get to usage, the fact that the shares haven't changed, I don't think you'd get away saying that if there was a print guy here and a newspaper guy here.
Yeah, those
because
shares
if you take
have
a look
changed.
at their shares, it's gone down. What's really happening is there's a migration to video.
Right.
And the migration is away from staid text. So I don't think that it's not getting the fair share. I just think it's an evolution of how we do advertising. And again, what we're talking right here is the consumption patterns.
Yeah.
How much time people spend with these various mediums, and our ability to
2-3%
count them.
of television time for online video.
Well, I've seen
If that
different
much,
numbers.
yeah.
Well, I've seen variety numbers. I believe the last Nielsen cross-channel study I saw was more like about 6% was going to online video.
Probably was
Okay.
younger demos.
Okay. But the point is, like, you acknowledge something here which I think is important, that friction, the amount of time and inefficiency it takes to process media is a function of how you guys allocate budget and buy it.
Absolutely.
I know I don't want to go too deep into programmatic, but I think it's relevant to our conversation here. Will that change things as you have more machine efficiency and the ability to process more without a lot of that haggle, and well, not haggle, but more of the processing time spent by people? Will we see much more share shift into other forms of video? Digital Out of Home now has a trading infrastructure too to do programmatically through SpotFax and Vistar and companies like that. Do you think we'll see that start to change rapidly in the next couple of years?
Without question.
Absolutely. I mean, I see the way that we staff at Media Kitchen. You know, there are fewer people working at Media Kitchen than there were just a couple of years ago because more business is being bought programmatically.
So I would just add, some of us at this dinner last night were talking about this topic, and I've been involved with the DPAA for several years, and I've been a proponent of the place-based medium with my clients for all of those years because I do feel like there's an inherent value of the complementary nature it offers, but haven't seen a lot of clients buy it. No matter how much I pitch it, they haven't really paid much attention. And I bring them the health club opportunities, I bring them the gas station opportunities, I bring them airline opportunities, and a lot of them are really relevant from a place standpoint, really relevant from who we're targeting, very not wasteful, very efficient, and I just haven't seen a lot of take up. And I think that a large reason is friction in another way,
Right.
which is justifying the metrics and justifying that people are actually paying attention. And all of these things have been justified and proven out by most of the networks in the space. So as much as there's a lot of pushback, there aren't a lot of good reasons not to do it, but they haven't. And as I've started to meet with the programmatic guys in the space, it's become, I think for me, it's become a little more obvious that there's a big potential there for this medium to begin to play into the scaled selling of audiences across 20 players as opposed to one network selling itself. And I think that there's always going to be a combination of both, because you're going to want to have opportunities to create customized packages for a single client with one or two networks that are very relevant, maybe custom creative, the whole thing. But we've been talking to our clients now for a couple of years about complementing their content-based strategies with an audience-focused strategy in television and video, et cetera. And it seems like a perfect play to be able to add a highly complementary, highly scaled, place-based video medium where we can now identify audiences very specifically. So I'm hot on that, and I actually think that there's a big potential there for place-based video, potentially.
Putting it in a manner where it makes it easier for us to evaluate and to look at, we'll get it better seen and more evaluation, but don't mistake that it's going to be bought. There's other reasons. And I'll say that there are a lot of media that I get involved in that are not efficient to look at, not efficient to be, but it's the right thing for the client. So we go that route. You're talking about programmatic buying. You got to be careful about that, because once you start getting programmatic buying, you're starting to take away the nuances of each of these vehicles. You're getting a commoditization. And if everyone gets commoditization, yeah, the programmatic buying will work.
But if they're not buying it at all, and this is a way to start utilizing the medium.
Right, but how many cable networks came into you to buy me at a $5 CPM, and they're still arguing now because it's off of a legacy base and they're 5% up each year. So yeah, I understand you get on there for efficiency and price, but You know, an X8, an X cable guy, just be careful of what baseline you set. It's hard to dig out of a hole.
Did you want to react?
Yeah, I did. So making it easy to buy digital place-based media will certainly allow for more dollars to flow to the channel. But I think the fact remains is that, you know, this kind of a medium is not a core part of any one plan, or at least certainly not for any of my clients. It's a nice to have. It makes it well-rounded. But it's not the core strategic channel, in which case it becomes very easy to cut. And I think that's a problem that the channel's going to have to sort out. Mobile was the same way a couple of years ago. Everybody was experimenting with mobile, and mobile was a nice to have, and everybody loved to get some learning in the channel, but the budgets were really small and it was easy to cut. That's changed. More and more now, mobile is a core central part to how we develop our communication plans. I don't know if, you know, digital out-of-home is going to become like mobile has become now. I would bet that it won't. But I think if it becomes easier to buy, it might become a little bit less expendable.
I think you have mediums that can become more important because of the functionality that devices or technology or apps or content offerings are essentially raising that medium up. There are some advantages in the place-based space that, you know, the proximity to retail and all that stuff, but I don't see the two as exactly the same situation, and that's why I'm a little more hot on the audience buying opportunity here, because I'm seeing a lot of great product not getting bought. And a lot of times I think the friction is very simple, and you know, I've seen this with addressable TV, I've seen it with interactive TV, all these great products that are completely fantastic engagement cells. They can add value to any media plan, but they get cut because the CMO isn't going, where the hell's my interactive TV, or where the hell's my place-based video? That's not happening. They're asking that about Mad Men. Sure. They're asking that about social. They're asking that about mobile right now.
Content-driven.
Yeah.
Could I just add one last thing just on the subject? So the phrase I heard last week, which I like, and I've repeated it now several times, is location is the new cookie. And I think it's related to this whole conversation. So location as a dimension in marketing, we have, when you said mobile, it kind of made me think of it. We have just started to scratch the surface in terms of using that from a targeting standpoint, using that from an analytics standpoint, using location as a great surrogate or the final moment of decision, certainly for CPG, certainly for retail. And I think that gives a lot of folks in this room a lot of reason to hope that 2014 might be kind of programmatic as to 2013 as location is to 2014, perhaps.
All right, so I think the people in this audience would like to know how it moves from nice to have to need to have, right? And I think what you guys were saying was it doesn't have enough broad reach to compete in the broader plans or schedules?
No, I don't think it's not. I mean, this medium has a decent amount of reach to it. I mean, there's a lot of traffic in all these locations, and there constantly is a replenished audience all day long.
So if it has the reach and it has the proximity, why does it not need to have then?
Exactly.
Oh.
We keep going to our clients and saying how great it is, but it's not.
So let me ask you, is the neutrality question not an agency problem? And I know you're not going to answer this, but is it a client problem? That they have a mindset and an association with what?
So, you know, we don't, so I don't know, maybe we're doing it wrong at Media Kitchen, and y'all will tell me if that's the case. But, you know, we don't go in there and say, you should buy digital out of home because you're going to reach a lot of people and you're going to create tremendous awareness of your whatever message overnight. That's not how we sell it. We talk about, if a client talks to us about important markets, if they talk to us about wanting to reach C-level executives when they're going up in the elevators to work, if they talk about maybe needing to reach commuters or people going from place to place, or if it's a QSR and we want to talk about food courts, or support, I don't know, a retailer at a mall, then we'll start leaning into this channel. But it's very strategy and tactic based. So so location, strategy, and then how you're going to execute that. It's not like we ever sort of gobble it all together and say, we're going to buy food courts, gas stations, malls, and elevators, and that's going to give us, tremendous reach and awareness. That's not how we think about it.
I think you can think about it in both ways. I think you can think about it in both ways. And it gets to the whole content-focused approach versus an audience-focused approach. So when you are marrying those two things, in your content-focused approach, you are looking to build relationships with media partners that are extremely relevant and contextually relevant and location relevant to the audience that you're trying to reach and to the strategy you're trying to play out. So I think that there are lots of reasons to handpick a single individual player in a certain channel or category based on that kind of a strategy. And there you might actually be customizing your creative for the elevator, or if you happen to be trying to reach business travelers, you're trying to speak to them in a way that recognizes the environment that you're reaching them in. And I think it's worth it to go down that path in a content-based strategy. But there's also this concept of marrying that up. Instead of packaging media and purchasing the stuff that we really want and packaging it in with a lot of other stuff to meet the overall communication goal, now there's an opportunity through technology and data, programmatic exchange opportunities as well, that are allowing us to identify those very specific audiences in television, in online video, and in this space as well, that I think can be bolted together as one comprehensive video audience-based strategy. So that's sort of what I mean by it. I think there's there's multiple ways of using every medium,
Right.
and that's what I mean by that. I didn't want to be thought of as the reach-based TV guy.
We're going to turn over to questions in a minute, so think about one. But I just want to really follow up on this last point, because I think the people in this room would like to know how they can go out and be more effective in selling and pitching their stories through. Barry, I heard you say it was a very strategic approach in your organization. That makes sense. What else do they need to be doing? Should they be making, I know you hate this, making more direct calls on your clients?
I don't hate that at all.
Give some practical advice about what they should be doing to overcome that bias.
Yeah, the sales teams are limited, so they have to focus their resources. I know that that's a difficulty for the industry, but I do think that regular, constant exposure to the benefits and the advantages of the medium and of the specific channel that you're pitching with our clients is a good thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. And I don't have any issue with getting a phone call from a client that said, hey, I met with this network the other day, and it seems they have a really good proposition. What do you think of it? If I'm doing my job right, then I should have already met with them. But if I haven't, I'm happy to go meet with them and discuss what the opportunity is. I don't feel back-ended by that, so I don't have an issue with it.
Any advice?
I think armed with data or information that shows kind of your ability to actually get close to a client business objective like a sale, as opposed to just simply an opportunity to deliver targeted impressions, is just continue to beat that drum. So the closer that you can prove what you do drives the cash register, what you do drives point of sale, what you do drives what's important to our clients, which is moving more stuff, I think that would be a winning formula.
One of the areas, I think the DPAA is a great start, because if you look at all the other mediums, they have organizations that pull in all the different entities within it to help promote the industry as a whole and help promote better learning, better understanding, better research, and they help each other to help it grow. So I think that's a first start. As far as going to clients, anyone want to go to any of my clients, that's fine. Just give me a call first and let me know. Clients will come to me and ask questions, so even if you do go behind my back to the clients, they're going to call me up anyways and say, what do you think? How does it look? Your first step, though, I would say, is make sure you speak to the planning people, because a lot of decisions are made at the first level, the strategic initiative, at which mediums achieve what objectives. So you have to understand, what is it the client wants to do? Who do they want to sell to? And can you put something together that helps that? I mean, in the media business that I've been over 30 years now, the biggest joke is everyone has a specific plan for my client. They open up a drawer and it's filed 1001, and I see it 36 times across a couple hundred clients. So if you want to go to the clients, that's great. You want to come to my planning people, that's great. But just make sure you come with something that's relevant to them, that's going to help them achieve their objectives on behalf of the client, not just, here's a great one that I brought over to Procter & Gamble, now I'm bringing it over to Kraft and then over to Unilever.
So sometimes I think that they do have trouble getting into us because we are running around, our media planners are running around.
They could use place-based media to target you.
They could. I have been targeted.
You know
I've been
what?
targeted by an online video company. They ran a commercial in my living room on the TV screen. On the way to work, I was reading Ad Age, and there was the ad right there. And I was in the cab, and I swear to you, it was there on the place-based screen as well. It was in the cab. Yeah. I guarantee that was somehow done through their householding technologies. It was all done on one day.
If you were reading MediaPost, you would not have been retargeted. But
oh, okay. I always know that what I read on MediaPost is private.
Hey, Joe, I'd love to just answer that question. And so the best meeting that I had with somebody from the DPAA recently was a few weeks ago probably, and I think it was with David Kahn from the Wall Street Journal Out of Home Network. And I actually called him after I read an article in your publication about the innovations that were coming out of his group. And I love the fact that you could retarget based on geo. And I thought that was a really great innovation. So my suggestion to all of you to get our attention, or at least my attention, is to lead with innovation. That's when I'll take a meeting. That's what I want to hear.
We have time for some questions if there are any from the audience. If not, I want to follow up on something. I'm surprised all of you didn't talk about.
The guy with the nice hair has a question.
Oh, Francois.
Barry, you always do this every year, Chris. Barry, you mentioned about tactics. And I think as an industry, we're being purchased a lot tactically. But we are evolving. Barry mentioned, as he opened the conference, that we just did a deal with Ford, where Ford purchased 10 networks together. And this was for local dealerships. So because they purchased 10 networks, we covered the tri-state area very effectively. Chris, it comes back to your point about programmatic buying that we talked about also last night. My question to you is as follows. Do you think that as we as an industry start stitching ourselves together and providing you bigger numbers, audience numbers, that we have a chance here to going from a tactic to a systematic buy?
That's what I mean by content and audience.
Yeah.
I think so.
Absolutely.
So the answer is,
Yeah.
Yeah. Just making it a lot easier for us to buy.
By putting it together, you're closing certain barriers. It gives it a greater opportunity. But again, you still have to come with a solid story and a reason.
Yeah.
Just putting it together to reach doesn't always help.
No, yeah, I'm assuming we're talking about it being accompanied with data and a buying exchange capability and us being able to identify who we're going after based on their behavior, which I think is the capability now.
So we have another question here from.
About 90% of the 20 million or so displays that operate out there in North America don't operate with advertising. So do you see the digital menu boards, the displays that are used for in-house promotion in that bank branch, having an impact on driving your strategy? So when Chase says, we've got displays that promote our products in our branches, please draw on that insight, draw on that engagement, draw on that intelligence, and drive the use of this medium to bring people into that branch. Do you think that's going to affect your approaches?
I'll try and answer that. So, that goes back to the planning side of media neutrality. I think when all of us are, thinking about an idea and figuring out the right ways to activate an idea, we'll do an audit of all of our clients' owned media. And I think that's an example that you're talking about of Chase's owned media. And that will have a role within the overall communications plan. So I think that, depending upon what a client has for us to use, it should certainly inform how we go to market. Is that what you were kind of getting at?
I would agree, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree too. Don't be mad at me.
He stand up.
He's gonna be mad.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe.
Unfortunately, I think we're out of time,
Yeah,
but we're
sure.
starting to get into some interesting ideas like own content, and we never talked about DMPs, but there'll be a panel on after us that'll talk about programmatic. So hopefully hopefully answered some questions for
This is great. If I could just mention, I think there's a lot of good opportunity and good hope. Chris, you well articulated, make it easier, make it substantive, see our clients, tell the story. And to what Francois mentioned, which we announced, you folks may have missed it, we announced this big deal this morning, where we did put together 10 networks, and we've actually got 2 other auto deals done now. We made it easier. So I think that, and you make a point of programmatic. Lyle, open to seeing the clients, just tell him first, because he's got a lot of that. And certainly David Cohen has spoke prolifically about the combination of online and video as, basically a fellow who oversaw all digital buying. Now you're overseeing TV buying as well. So certainly that comes together with a lot of important points. And then Barry, where you talked about the Wall Street Journal Office Network Bezo deal, which is very interesting for context attribution, kind of following people from the office lobby back to the office online. So let's give these guys a hand. Thank you very much.